Okay, so hello, we're the Nuclear Energy Group. I'm Tom Robson.
Hi, I'm Billy Ford.
I'm Ryohei Yamanaka.
I'm Miyu Kano.
I'm Ko Oikawa.
I'm Tsuyoshi Yagi.
I'm Mizuki Yamada.
Over the past few days, we've been debating the issue of nuclear energy with Professor Wade Allison, and mainly debating the issue, is it dangerous to human health? One of the major problems about radiation is public opinions.
Yeah, so many people fear the words radiation and nuclear, and it's entirely understandable because of reasons such as its use as weapons on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And there are rare disasters like Chernobyl, which are just highly publicised. The truth is that these have been exaggerated by the press and the media and government, and in many cases the radiation isn't actually harmful to humans. Another big problem is that no one can trust each other, so they don't know where to get their scientific information from. And this can make it extremely difficult when you're trying to come up with a solution to the problem. We will now give a few examples.
The Japanese company TEPCO got a lot of grief in Japan when they pumped radioactive water into the sea off Japan. They claimed, although it was radioactive, it wasn't dangerous. And no one believed this, but this turned out to be true. For we calculated that if you drank a litre of this water every day for 3 months, you would only get as much radiation as you would in 2 CT scans, which are medical procedures that are harmless to us.
So another issue that was raised was about meat from cows that had been eating radioactive substances. And there's a real tight regulation on this. But another calculation we did worked out that to actually get the same radiation dose as 1 CT scan, you'd have to eat about 5 tons of meat, which I don't know about any of you, but I certainly couldn't eat that much. So it's clearly a ridiculous regulation which didn't need to be in place.
The current radiation regulations are extremely strict, only recommending that a person is exposed to 0.1 millisieverts of radiation per month. A CT scan exposes you to 8 millisieverts of radiation, but people can survive far more than that.
Okay, so this is quite an interesting graph on the Chernobyl death rates. On the x-axis you have the dose of radiation in millisieverts. On the y-axis you have the percentage of the death rate. And this shows that up to 2,000 millisieverts, there were no firefighters who died as a result, which is not what people really think. And then up to 4,000, only one person died from it. So out of 195 people who were exposed to up to 4,000, there was one death, which is just not what the public or the media were saying.
Another example where people get large doses of radiation is in radiotherapy, the medical technique used to kill cancerous tumours. In this process, patients are exposed to huge amounts of radiation, but this is focused into a small area of their body. The tumour cells are killed by around 40,000 millisieverts per month over the course of multiple treatments. These cells die, but the area around the tumour receives a dose of 20,000 millisieverts per month, and this keeps functioning due to the time between each treatment, allowing the DNA to be repaired.
Okay, so this big box at the top is the radiation dose that you get on the tumour cells, which is at 40,000 millisieverts, which is potentially harmful because it kills the cells, but it is spread out. And this block here shows what the cells around that get, and they get 20,000 millisieverts, and they still function and work just as they should do. So this 100 millisieverts per month is a dose that we could all survive and is perfectly harmless to us. And it's a kind of a level we call as high as relatively safe. Yet the current regulation is this, 0.1 millisieverts per month. And they go by this as low as reasonably achievable. But that's 1,000 times lower than the radiation we can actually handle. So I cannot understand why it is that low and why it has to cause so much fear among the people.
These strict regulations meant that people in the Fukushima region were forced to evacuate their homes for fear of radiation. Well, there was really no need for this, and it caused much stress for the inhabitants. There were many reported cases of increased alcoholism and suicide as a result of the stress of having to leave their homes and the fear of radiation, and these need not have happened.
So Fukushima has shown that it's not actually the radiation that's killing people, it's the stress from the radiation and the kind of implications that the government have had with their regulations, and that's just what's harming the country.
We will now pass over to our colleagues from Japan who will give their opinions and conclusions.
Next, I want to introduce my conclusions. My ideas about nuclear power were changed by Professor Allison's lecture. There are two reasons. Firstly, before his lecture, I thought that using nuclear power is dangerous because of what happened after the earthquake. So I agreed with not using nuclear power generators. However, I found that this idea was wrong about radiation because it is very low and it doesn't influence our body. Secondly, I found out the reason why a lot of people are against using nuclear power. I was deeply impressed by one thing. He said, so the reason why a lot of people are against nuclear power is not because of the danger of nuclear power plants. It is because of huge amount of stress caused by nuclear power. In other words, it means that a lot of people, especially those who live around nuclear power plant, always afraid of the danger of nuclear power. It's not that nuclear power plants are bad directly, and a lot of people don't understand the science behind nuclear power. A lot of people are just against it without reason. Don't you think that's wrong? So I think we should make a judgment after we have more knowledge about nuclear power. I think that maybe if a lot of people know more about it, public opinion will change. Because of these two reasons, I changed my ideas about nuclear power generations.
In my opinion, we need nuclear power. It is very powerful, so it is essential for our lives. Firstly, as you heard just now, it can be said that radiation is scientifically safe. In addition, although there are some natural energies, they are too unstable to provide us with electricity and very expensive. So nuclear power is necessary. I live in Fukushima, and I think the biggest problem is how we tell Japanese people, especially people in Fukushima, that Fukushima is safe. Many Japanese people feel anxiety, so we need to explain the scientific evidence. It is a very difficult problem, but also it is an inevitable problem. In the future, I will work with scientists to make it happen. Through this project, I keenly felt my ignorance of radiation, although I am from Fukushima. So the important thing which I can do is to know about radiation and think about radiation from a scientific viewpoint. I can also teach people in my community about the scientific fact about radiation.
During this project, I saw various data. For example, radioactive meat and water from Fukushima, and so on. Surely, because we don't take in 1,000 kilograms meat and water, this data showed that using nuclear power isn't so dangerous. But I disagree with using nuclear power. Firstly, I experienced a big earthquake at 25 kilometers from the nuclear power plant, and I had to evacuate from my hometown because of radiation. Also, my grandparents' house was washed away by tsunami, and there is radiation, so they cannot go back home. My grandfather worked in the Fukushima second nuclear power plant, So he knows the fear of the radioactivity very well. He said, "This accident was dangerous. I can trust him." Secondly, meat and water go out of our bodies quickly, but the radioactive materials are also in the air. We have to stay with these for all our lives. Meat and water will not. Finally, all of the nuclear reactors in the Fukushima first nuclear power are still broken. Like Chernobyl, it's not fixed yet. The Japanese Prime Minister said we can fix it, but I don't think so. If we cannot fix things when something happens to them, we should not make them. Because of these three reasons, I disagree with using nuclear power.
Before, I couldn't determine whether agree or disagree with nuclear energy. But now, I agree with nuclear energy. I have known the benefit from the nuclear energy, for example, for medicine or energy. And I also understood how dangerous the radiation is because I know Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and Fukushima. Through this science workshop, I studied the opinion which agrees with nuclear energy from Professor Allison, and I also I recognized the safety of it. That it was not so difficult. It was not more safe than I thought. And in my opinion, it is necessary for us to use nuclear energy because it is environmental friendly in aspect of air pollution. We can dig out uranium 25 years, and for another cesium for another 125 years, which is at least 150 years. However, sometimes in the near future, we have to change our thinking of energy resource. In conclusion, I'll keep considering about energy. I'll never forget it. Someday I want to render a great service to humanity.
In my opinion, I think we need nuclear power generation. I think to continue using fossil fuel is very hard because of environmental problems and the limiting of fossil fuel. Professor Allison gave us one example. We all drive cars, although many people die from car accidents. The same can be said about radiation. I think a lot of people are frightened about radiation and nuclear power, but they don't know much about it. For living with radiation and nuclear power, from now on, I'd like to judge what is correct by myself and understand what is good and bad for us.
So, to conclude, from this course we have learnt that the nuclear radiation levels are not dangerous. However, nuclear power will always be a hotly debated subject. The most important thing is that everyone learns for themselves and draws their own conclusions from the scientific data. Thank you for listening.